The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Prince William adjusted his navy blue suit jacket for the third time. He stood in front of the ornate mirror in his private quarters, studying his reflection with the kind of careful attention he usually reserved for important state matters. Today was different from any other day in his royal duties. Today he and Catherine would sit for their first official joint portrait as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Catherine emerged from her dressing room, wearing an elegant emerald green dress that complemented her dark hair perfectly. The color had been chosen carefully by her stylist, as it would photograph beautifully and represent the couple's connection to Ireland, one of the Commonwealth nations close to their hearts. She moved with the grace that had made her a favorite among royal watchers, but William could see the slight tension in her shoulders. "Are you nervous?" William asked, reaching for her hand. Even after years of marriage, he still found comfort in the familiar warmth of her touch. Catherine smiled, the expression lighting up her face in the way that had first caught William's attention during their university days at St. Andrews. "A little," she admitted. "It's strange to think this portrait will hang in galleries for generations to see. Our great-grandchildren will look at this image." The weight of that responsibility settled between them. This wasn't just another photo session for a magazine cover or official engagement pictures. This portrait would become part of royal history, joining the ranks of paintings that had captured monarchs and their families for centuries. The artist they had selected was renowned for his ability to capture not just physical likeness, but the essence of his subjects. Their private secretary knocked gently on the door, announcing that the car was ready to take them to the artist's studio in central London. The couple had chosen to have the portrait painted at the artist's own space rather than at the palace, hoping the change of environment might help them feel more relaxed and natural. As they walked through the palace corridors, their footsteps echoing softly on the polished floors, William reflected on how different this experience would be from the casual photographs they were used to. Every royal engagement was documented, every public appearance captured by dozens of photographers, but this formal portrait required something entirely different. They would need to sit still for hours, maintaining their composure while the artist studied every line of their faces, every fold of their clothing. The drive through London gave them time to discuss their expectations for the day. Catherine had researched the artist extensively, reading about his previous work with other notable figures. She learned that he preferred to spend considerable time talking with his subjects before beginning to paint, believing that understanding their personalities was crucial to creating an authentic representation. He painted the Archbishop of Canterbury last year, Catherine mentioned as their car navigated through the busy London streets. The portrait was praised for capturing both his authority and his warmth. William nodded, watching the city pass by through tinted windows. "I hope he can capture us as we really are, not just as the roles we play in public." This desire for authenticity was something both William and Catherine valued deeply. Despite their royal positions, they had always tried to maintain a sense of normalcy in their relationship and family life. They wanted their portrait to reflect not just their official titles, but their connection as husband and wife, their shared commitment to their royal duties, and the strength they drew from each other. The artist's studio was located in a converted Victorian warehouse in South London. As their car pulled up to the building, they could see the artist waiting at the entrance, clearly excited about the prestigious commission. He was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers, evidence of his dedication to his craft. Inside the studio, the space was filled with natural light from large skylights overhead. Canvases in various stages of completion lined the walls, and the smell of oil paint and turpentine filled the air. It was a working artist's space, far removed from the formal grandeur of royal palaces, and both William and Catherine found themselves relaxing slightly in the creative atmosphere. The artist showed them around his studio, explaining his process and showing them some of his previous work. His enthusiasm for painting was infectious, and soon they found themselves engaged in animated conversation about art, technique, and the challenge of capturing personality in portraiture. I don't want to paint you as statues, the artist explained earnestly. Yes, this is a formal portrait that will represent your positions in the royal family, but I want people who see it to understand that you're real people with real emotions and connections. This approach resonated with both William and Catherine. They had always been conscious of the balance between their public roles and their private selves, and they appreciated the artist's understanding of this delicate equilibrium. The artist had prepared a comfortable seating area where they could pose together. He explained that he would spend the first day simply observing them, making preliminary sketches, and getting to know them better. The actual painting would begin in subsequent sessions, allowing him to work from both life and from the detailed studies he would create. As they settled into their positions for the first time, William and Catherine experienced the strange sensation of being simultaneously scrutinized and cared for. The artist's gaze was professional, but kind, studying the way light fell across their faces, how they naturally held themselves, and the subtle interactions between them that revealed their relationship. The morning passed quickly as the artist worked, his pencil moving rapidly across paper as he captured different angles and expressions. He encouraged them to talk naturally, explaining that he wanted to see them as they were when they weren't consciously posing. This led to easy conversation about their children, their recent royal engagements, and their shared interests. During a break, Catherine walked around the studio, examining the artist's other works more closely. She was struck by his ability to capture not just physical features, but something deeper about each subject. There was a portrait of an elderly woman whose eyes seemed to hold a lifetime of stories, and a painting of a young father holding his child that radiated love and protection. Each person has a light inside them. The artist explained when he noticed her interest. My job is to find that light and make it visible to others. With you and Prince William, I can see the strength you give each other, the shared sense of purpose. That's what I want to capture. As the day progressed, William found himself thinking about the legacy they were creating. This portrait would outlast them both, serving as a record not just of how they looked at this moment in time, but of who they were as people and as a couple. Future historians would study it, art critics would analyze it, and ordinary people would see it in galleries and form impressions about their reign and their relationship. The responsibility was humbling, but also inspiring. They had the opportunity to present themselves to history in their own way, to show the world the partnership that had sustained them through the challenges and privileges of royal life. When the session ended for the day, both William and Catherine felt a mixture of excitement and anticipation. The artist had captured something in his preliminary sketches that felt true to who they were, and they looked forward to seeing how that would translate into the final painted portrait. As they prepared to leave the studio, the artist thanked them for their openness and natural behavior during the session. You've given me everything I need to create something special, he assured them. This portrait will show not just the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, but William and Catherine, the people behind the titles. The drive back to Kensington Palace was filled with discussion about the day's experience. Both felt they had made the right choice in artist and approach. The formal portrait would be formal, yes, but it would also be deeply personal, capturing a moment in their lives and their relationship that they could look back on with pride. That evening, as they tucked their children into bed and settled into their private time together, William and Catherine reflected on the significance of what they were creating. The portrait would become part of their official legacy, but more importantly, it would be a testament to their partnership and their commitment to serving their country together. The first day of their portrait experience had exceeded their expectations, leaving them eager to continue the process and see how the artist would transform his sketches and observations into a lasting work of art that would represent them for generations to come. 3 days later, William and Catherine returned to the artist's studio for their second sitting. The London weather had turned gray and drizzly, but inside the converted warehouse, the atmosphere remained warm and welcoming. The artist had spent the intervening days studying his sketches and preparing his canvas, a large piece that would eventually house their dual portrait. As they settled into their positions, Catherine noticed how different this session felt from their first visit. The initial nervousness had given way to a comfortable familiarity with the process. The artist had arranged their seating to showcase both their individual personalities and their connection as a couple. William sat slightly forward, his posture reflecting the confidence that came with his royal training, while Catherine was positioned to show her natural elegance and the warmth that had made her beloved by the public. Today we begin with color studies, the artist explained, showing them small canvases where he would test different combinations of hues and tones. I need to understand how the light affects your skin tones, how your clothing colors interact with each other, and what palette will best represent both of you. The process was fascinating to watch. Catherine found herself marveling at how the artist could mix colors that seemed to capture the exact shade of William's eyes or the subtle variations in her own complexion. Each small study was like a miniature work of art, exploring different aspects of their appearance and the overall composition. During one of their breaks, William engaged the artist in conversation about the technical aspects of portraiture. As someone who had always been interested in art, he was curious about the challenges of painting two subjects in a single composition while maintaining focus on both individuals. The key, the artist explained, is finding the visual flow that connects you both while respecting your individual presence. In royal portraits throughout history, artists have used various techniques. Sometimes they position subjects so one appears dominant. Sometimes they create perfect symmetry. For you too, I want to show equality in partnership. This approach appealed to both William and Catherine. Their marriage had always been built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities, and they wanted their portrait to reflect that balance. Catherine's role as a working royal had evolved significantly since their wedding, and she now carried out numerous solo engagements while also supporting William in his duties as future king. As the artist worked on his color studies, he encouraged them to continue their natural conversation. This technique helped him observe their expressions and body language when they weren't consciously posing. He noticed how William's face softened when Catherine spoke about their children, and how Catherine's posture straightened with pride when discussing their charitable work. Tell me about your most meaningful royal engagement together, the artist requested as he mixed a particular shade of blue for William's suit. Without hesitation, Catherine spoke about their visit to a children's hospital the previous month. They had spent hours with young patients, their families, and the medical staff. William had played football with children who were recovering from surgery, while Catherine had sat quietly with parents who were facing difficult diagnoses. What struck me most, William added, was how Catherine could switch from playing games with the children to providing genuine comfort to worried parents. She has this ability to meet people exactly where they are emotionally. The artist's brush paused as he observed the look William gave Catherine during this description. It was a moment of pure admiration and love, the kind of expression that revealed the depth of their partnership beyond their public roles. These were the moments he lived for as a portrait artist, when the formal masks dropped and he could see the real people beneath. Catherine blushed slightly at William's words, but continued the story. We met one little girl who was having treatment for a rare condition. She was so brave, but you could see she was frightened. William spent nearly an hour with her, not as a prince, but just as someone who cared. By the time we left, she was laughing and making him promise to visit again. As they spoke, the artist's hands moved quickly, capturing not just their physical features, but the emotion and connection evident in their interaction. He made notes about the way their eyes lit up when discussing their work, how their voices warmed when talking about the people they had met. The afternoon session focused on the more challenging aspects of the composition. The artist had to consider how their portrait would be displayed and viewed. Would it hang in a formal stateroom where dignitaries would see it during official visits? Would it be placed in a public gallery where ordinary citizens could observe it? Each potential setting required different considerations for lighting, scale, and overall impact. I want this portrait to work on multiple levels, the artist explained as he worked on a larger preliminary study. Up close, viewers should see the fine details, the individual personalities, the quality of the brushwork. From a distance, it should have a strong overall presence and clearly communicate your roles and relationship. This balance between intimate detail and grand impression was something both William and Catherine understood well from their royal training. Every public appearance required them to connect personally with individuals while also representing the monarchy to larger crowds and television audiences. As the day progressed, they discussed the historical context of their portrait. Royal portraiture had evolved significantly over the centuries, from the highly stylized paintings of medieval monarchs to the more naturalistic approach favored in recent decades. Their portrait would be compared to famous works featuring previous royal couples, including the official portraits of William's parents and grandparents. We want to honor that tradition while also making something that reflects who we are as a modern royal couple, Catherine said during a particularly long pose. The artist nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. The formal elements will connect this portrait to royal tradition, but the emotional content will be entirely contemporary, entirely you. One of the most interesting aspects of the session was learning about the artist's research process. He had studied not just their public appearances, but also the historical significance of their roles. He understood that William's position as heir to the throne brought specific responsibilities and expectations, while Catherine's role as a commoner who married into royalty represented a modern approach to monarchy. Your story is particularly compelling, he told Catherine during a break. You've maintained your own identity while embracing royal duty. That balance is something I want to capture in how you're positioned and how you carry yourself in the portrait. The technical challenges were considerable. Painting two subjects meant managing twice as many variables: lighting, positioning, clothing, expressions, and the overall interaction between the figures. The artist had to ensure that neither William nor Catherine would appear more prominent than the other, while also creating a composition that felt natural and unforced. By late afternoon, substantial progress had been made on the color studies and preliminary work. The artist showed them how different lighting conditions would affect the final portrait, explaining why certain times of day produce the most flattering and accurate colors for their skin tones and clothing. As their second session concluded, both William and Catherine felt increasingly confident about the direction of their portrait. The artist's respectful approach and technical skill were evident in every aspect of his work, from the careful color mixing to the thoughtful composition planning. I feel like we're creating something truly special, Catherine remarked as they prepared to leave the studio. William agreed, adding, "It's remarkable how much thought goes into every element. I had no idea how complex portrait painting could be." The artist walked them to their car, thanking them for their patience with the lengthy process. "The next session will be exciting," he promised. "We'll begin working on the actual portrait canvas. Everything we've done so far has been preparation for that moment." As their car pulled away from the studio, both William and Catherine felt a growing excitement about their portrait. They were beginning to understand that this would be more than just another official image. It would be a work of art that captured a specific moment in their lives and their relationship preserved forever in oils and canvas. The evening news that day included a brief mention of their ongoing portrait sessions, sparking public interest in the project. Letters and emails poured into Kensington Palace from well-wishers excited about the upcoming reveal of the official portrait. That night, as they discussed the day's experience over dinner, William and Catherine realized that the portrait process was giving them a unique opportunity to reflect on their journey together and their shared vision for their royal roles. The careful observation required for the sessions was helping them see themselves and each other in new ways, deepening their appreciation for their partnership and their shared commitment to service. The third session arrived with an air of anticipation that was almost electric. William and Catherine had been thinking about their portrait throughout the week, wondering how the artist would translate his sketches and color studies into the final painting. As they entered the familiar studio, they were greeted by the sight of a large, pristine canvas mounted on an easel, ready to receive the first brushstrokes of their official portrait. The artist appeared more focused today, his preparation evident in an organized arrangement of brushes, palette knives, and carefully mixed colors. He had spent considerable time since their last session refining his approach, studying the preliminary work, and planning each stage of the painting process. Today marks the real beginning, he announced with a smile that reflected both confidence and excitement. Everything we've done until now has been building toward this moment. Today, your portrait truly comes to life. Catherine felt a flutter of nervousness as she settled into her pose. Knowing that the artist was now working on the canvas that would eventually hang in galleries and royal residences made the experience feel more significant somehow. This was no longer practice or preparation. This was the creation of their permanent artistic legacy. The artist began with what he called the architecture of the painting, using thin washes of color to establish the basic composition and proportions. William watched, fascinated, as rough shapes began to emerge that would eventually become their recognizable forms. The process was both methodical and intuitive, requiring technical precision combined with artistic instinct. I always start with the overall harmony of the piece, the artist explained as he worked. Before I capture your individual features, I need to establish how you exist together in the space, how the light moves around both of you, and how your presence fills the canvas. This holistic approach resonated with both William and Catherine. Their royal partnership worked the same way, with each individual strength contributing to a greater whole. They had learned over the years that their most effective public engagements happened when they complemented each other naturally rather than competing for attention. As the morning progressed, the artist began to define their figures more clearly. He worked back and forth between both subjects, never focusing on one for too long before returning to consider how changes affected the overall composition. This technique prevented him from overworking any single area while maintaining the balance between them. Tell me about a typical day in your lives, the artist requested as he worked on establishing the basic structure of their poses. I want to understand the rhythm of your daily existence. William and Catherine exchanged glances before Catherine began describing their routine. Our days usually start very early, around 6 o'clock. William often has briefings or meetings scheduled for breakfast time, while I might review plans for upcoming engagements or spend time with the children before they leave for school. The artist's brush moved steadily as she spoke, capturing something in her expression that suggested the quiet determination required to manage multiple responsibilities simultaneously. William picked up the story. What people don't often realize is how much coordination goes into our public appearances. Every engagement requires briefings about the people we'll meet, the issues we'll discuss, and the protocol we need to follow. Catherine has become incredibly skilled at adapting to different situations throughout a single day. As they described their routine, the artist observed how their body language reflected their different approaches to royal duty. William carried himself with the bearing that came from a lifetime of royal training, while Catherine displayed a more recently acquired confidence that spoke to her adaptability and natural grace. The technical challenges of the painting became apparent as the day progressed. Creating accurate skin tones under artificial studio lighting required constant adjustment and comparison. The artist frequently stepped back from the canvas to check his work from different distances, ensuring that details would be visible up close while the overall impact remained strong from across a room. Royal portraits have to work in grand spaces, he explained during a break. When this hangs in a state room or gallery, viewers might see it from 20 feet away before they come closer to examine the details. Every brushstroke has to contribute to both the intimate and the distant viewing experience. Catherine found herself thinking about the historical portraits she had studied in preparation for this experience. She remembered visiting galleries and being struck by how certain paintings seemed to communicate directly with viewers across centuries. The prospect that their portrait might have that kind of lasting impact was both thrilling and somewhat overwhelming. The artist worked with remarkable efficiency, building up layers of color that gradually brought their forms into clearer definition. He paid particular attention to their hands, explaining that hands often revealed as much about subjects as their faces. William's hands showed evidence of his polo playing and outdoor activities, while Catherine's reflected her more recent engagement with royal duties. Hands tell stories, the artist mused as he carefully observed how they naturally held themselves. They reveal profession, character, and, in your case, the balance between formality and approachability that defines modern royalty. The afternoon session focused on the intricate work of capturing their clothing. Catherine's emerald dress required careful attention to how light played across the fabric, creating areas of brilliance and shadow that gave the garment dimension and life. William's navy suit, while seemingly simpler, presented its own challenges in terms of capturing the subtle variations in tone and texture. During their conversation, they discussed the decision-making process behind their choice of clothing for the portrait. Every element had been considered carefully, from the colors that would photograph well to the symbolic significance of their selections. Catherine's dress color connected to their patronage of Irish causes, while William's classic navy suit represented the timeless tradition of royal portraiture. We wanted to choose clothing that would feel appropriate both now and in 50 years, Catherine explained. Fashion changes so quickly, but we hope to select pieces that would have lasting elegance. The artist nodded approvingly. That's exactly the right approach for a formal portrait. You want elements that anchor the work in your specific time period without making it feel dated as years pass. One of the most challenging aspects of the session was maintaining natural expressions throughout the long periods of posing. The artist encouraged them to continue conversations that would keep their faces animated and genuine. He was particularly interested in capturing the subtle expressions that appeared when they discussed their children or their shared charitable interests. Your faces completely transform when you talk about your children, he observed. There's a warmth and pride that's quite different from your official expressions. I want to capture some of that parental joy without making it too obvious. This comment led to a discussion about their hopes for their children's futures and their desire to provide them with as normal a childhood as possible given their unique circumstances. William spoke about his own experiences growing up in the public eye and how he and Catherine worked to protect their children while still preparing them for their eventual roles. As the third session drew to a close, the basic structure of their portrait was clearly established on the canvas. While still rough in places, the painting already showed promise of becoming something truly special. The artist's skill was evident in how he had captured not just their physical likenesses, but something essential about their relationship and individual personalities. I can see it taking shape, Catherine said as she examined the work in progress. It's extraordinary to watch something like this develop. William was equally impressed by the progress. You can already see the life in it. It doesn't look like a stiff, formal portrait at all. The artist beamed at their positive reaction. That's exactly what I was hoping for. We're creating something that honors tradition while showing who you really are as people. The next sessions will be about refining details and bringing everything into sharper focus. As they prepared to leave, both William and Catherine felt a deep satisfaction with the day's work. They were beginning to see their portrait emerge from the canvas, and it exceeded their expectations in terms of both artistic quality and emotional authenticity. The drive back to Kensington Palace was filled with animated discussion about the painting process and their growing excitement about the final result. They had developed a real appreciation for the artist's skill and dedication, and they looked forward to the remaining sessions that would bring their portrait to completion. That evening, they shared their experiences with their children, describing the painting process in terms the young ones could understand. The children were fascinated by the idea of their parents sitting still for hours while someone painted their picture, and they asked numerous questions about when they might see the finished portrait. As they settled into their evening routine, William and Catherine reflected on how the portrait experience was providing them with a unique opportunity to pause and consider their relationship, their roles, and their shared journey. The careful attention required for the sittings had made them more aware of their partnership and the strength they drew from each other in their demanding public lives. 2 weeks into the portrait process, William and Catherine had developed a comfortable rhythm with their sessions. They arrived at the studio on a crisp Thursday morning to find the artist in an exceptionally good mood, clearly pleased with the progress he had made during their time apart. The canvas now showed recognizable figures that were unmistakably the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, though many details still required refinement. Today we focus on the faces, the artist announced as they settled into their familiar positions. This is the most crucial and delicate phase of the entire portrait. Everything else supports this central work. Catherine felt her heart rate increase slightly at this news. She had always been somewhat self-conscious about being photographed, though years of royal duties had helped her become more comfortable with public attention. Having her face studied and recreated with such intense scrutiny felt deeply personal, even intimate. The artist began with William's face, explaining that he preferred to work on one subject at a time when dealing with facial features. This approach allowed him to concentrate fully on capturing not just the physical likeness, but the character and personality that showed through each subject's expression. "Your face tells the story of your experiences," the artist said to William as he worked with incredibly fine brushes. "There's the confidence that comes from your royal training, but also the humanity you've developed through your charitable work and military service." William found himself thinking about the experiences that had shaped his features. His time as a search and rescue pilot had given him a deep appreciation for ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. His work with homeless charities had opened his eyes to challenges he might never have understood from within palace walls. Each experience had left its mark, not just emotionally, but in the subtle lines and expressions that the artist was now capturing with paint. The process of painting facial features required extraordinary precision and patience. The artist worked in thin layers, building up skin tones gradually, while paying careful attention to the way light fell across William's face. He studied the shape of his eyes, the set of his jaw, and the particular way his mouth curved when he relaxed into a natural expression. The challenge with royal portraits, the artist explained as he worked, is capturing dignity and authority while maintaining warmth and accessibility. The public needs to see both the future king and the caring father and husband. This balance was something William had been conscious of throughout his adult life. His grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had mastered the art of appearing both regal and approachable, and William had studied her example carefully. He wanted to be seen as someone who took his responsibilities seriously while remaining connected to the experiences of ordinary people. Catherine watched the process with fascination, observing how the artist could capture William's likeness with seemingly simple brushstrokes that somehow conveyed complex emotions and character traits. She could see her husband's face emerging on the canvas, but elevated somehow, presented in a way that highlighted his best qualities while remaining completely recognizable. After several hours of intense work on William's features, the artist turned his attention to Catherine. Her face presented different challenges, requiring a more delicate approach to capture her feminine features while conveying the strength and intelligence that had made her such an effective working royal. "You have very expressive eyes," the artist observed as he began working on Catherine's face. "They show both compassion and determination. I want to capture that combination." Catherine had learned to use her expressions carefully during royal engagements. She had discovered that a warm smile could put nervous people at ease, while a more serious expression was appropriate when discussing weighty matters with government officials or charity representatives. The artist seemed to be capturing something between these public expressions, finding the person behind the royal role. The technical challenges of painting Catherine's features were considerable. Her dark hair required careful attention to show its texture and movement, while her skin tones needed to be rendered with subtlety to avoid appearing flat or artificial. The artist worked with extraordinary care, frequently stepping back to check his progress and ensure that both subjects remained balanced within the overall composition. During breaks, they discussed the emotional aspects of being immortalized in paint. Catherine admitted that the process felt more vulnerable than she had expected, knowing that the artist was studying her features so intently and translating them into a permanent record. It's strange to think that this painting will exist long after we're gone, she reflected during one break. Future generations will form impressions about who we were based partly on what they see in this portrait. William nodded, understanding her feelings completely. But that's also what makes it so important that we get it right. This isn't just about how we look today. It's about representing our values and our approach to royal service. The artist overheard their conversation and offered his own perspective. The beauty of painted portraits is that they capture not just a moment in time, but the essence of their subjects. A good portrait reveals character in ways that photography sometimes cannot. As the day progressed, the facial work became increasingly detailed and refined. The artist paid particular attention to the subtle differences in how each subject's personality showed through their features. William's face reflected the weight of future kingship, while Catherine's showed the grace and adaptability that had made her transition into royal life so successful. The artist also worked on the interaction between their faces within the composition. While they weren't looking directly at each other in the pose, their positioning suggested their connection and mutual support. The slight angle of their heads, the way their expressions complemented each other, and the overall harmony of their presence together all contributed to the portrait's emotional impact. Great double portraits show not just two individuals, but the relationship between them, the artist explained as he refined the area where their figures connected visually. Viewers should understand immediately that these are two people who share a deep bond and common purpose. This artistic goal aligned perfectly with William and Catherine's real relationship. Their marriage had always been built on mutual respect and shared commitment to their royal duties. They had learned to support each other through the challenges of public life while maintaining their individual identities and strengths. The afternoon session included work on their hands, which the artist considered crucial elements of the portrait. Hands could convey emotion, status, and personality in ways that complemented facial expressions. He studied how William and Catherine naturally positioned their hands, looking for gestures that felt authentic and meaningful. Royal portraits traditionally show very formal hand positions, the artist noted as he worked, but I want your hands to look natural and relaxed. This will help the overall portrait feel more contemporary and accessible. Catherine's hands were positioned to show her wedding rings, symbols of both her personal commitment to William and her connection to the royal family. The artist paid careful attention to rendering these details accurately, understanding their symbolic importance within the larger work. William's hands were painted to suggest both strength and gentleness, qualities that defined his approach to his royal role. The artist captured the way his hands naturally fell when he was at ease, avoiding the stiff formality that characterized some historical royal portraits. As the session concluded, both subjects were amazed by the transformation the painting had undergone. Their faces now looked back at them from the canvas with remarkable lifelikeness, while still maintaining the elevated quality appropriate for a formal royal portrait. I feel like I'm looking at ourselves, but somehow enhanced, Catherine said as she studied the work in progress. The artist smiled at her reaction. That's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. I want the portrait to show you as you are, but presented in the most compelling and dignified way possible. As they prepared to leave the studio, both William and Catherine felt that they were witnessing the creation of something truly special. The artist's skill and sensitivity had produced a work that honored both their individual qualities and their partnership, creating a portrait that would represent them with pride for generations to come. The drive home was filled with excitement about the approaching completion of their portrait. They discussed plans for its eventual unveiling and the locations where it might be displayed. The painting had exceeded their expectations in every way, and they looked forward to sharing it with the public who had supported them throughout their royal journey. That evening, they called William's father to update him on the portrait's progress. King Charles was delighted to hear about their positive experience and looked forward to seeing the finished work. The portrait would eventually join the collection of royal artworks that documented the monarchy's history, taking its place among the masterpieces that had captured previous generations of the royal family. The final session arrived with a sense of completion and accomplishment that filled the artist's studio. Over the past month, William and Catherine had watched their portrait evolve from blank canvas to nearly finished masterpiece, and today would mark the culmination of weeks of careful, dedicated work. The painting now stood before them in its full glory, requiring only final touches and refinements. Every detail had been meticulously crafted, from the subtle play of light across their faces to the rich textures of their clothing. The artist had succeeded in creating a work that was both formally appropriate for its royal subjects and warmly human in its emotional content. Today we add the final details that will bring everything together, the artist announced, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and focused concentration. These last touches often make the difference between a good portrait and a great one. Catherine felt a bittersweet emotion as she settled into her pose for what might be the last time. The painting sessions had become a treasured part of their routine, providing a peaceful break from the constant demands of royal duties. She had enjoyed the quiet conversations with the artist and the opportunity to reflect on their lives and relationship in a contemplative environment. The artist began working on the subtle details that would give the portrait its final polish. He refined the catchlights in their eyes, those tiny highlights that brought life and sparkle to painted features. These almost microscopic touches were crucial for creating the sense that the subjects were truly present and engaged with the viewer. Eyes are called the windows to the soul for good reason. The artist murmured as he worked with an incredibly fine brush. These final details in your eyes will determine whether viewers feel they're looking at a painting or meeting two real people. William watched in fascination as these tiny additions transformed their painted faces. The careful placement of highlights and shadows created depth and dimensionality that made their portraits seem to breathe with life. It was remarkable how small technical details could have such dramatic impact on the overall effect. The artist also refined the rendering of their clothing, adding final touches that captured the texture and weight of the fabrics. Catherine's emerald dress received particular attention, with delicate brushwork that showed how the light caught the material surface. William's navy suit was enhanced with subtle details that suggested the quality and tailoring of his formal wear. Clothing tells its own story in portraits, the artist explained as he worked. Your choices reflect not just personal taste, but your understanding of your roles and the occasions you're dressed for. Indeed, their clothing choices for the portrait had been made with careful consideration. They wanted to present themselves as contemporary royals who understood both tradition and modernity. Their outfits were formal enough for the gravity of a state portrait while remaining accessible and relatable to ordinary viewers. Throughout the morning, the artist made countless small adjustments that gradually brought the portrait to its final form. He adjusted color balances, refined edges, and enhanced the subtle modeling that gave their figures weight and presence within the painted space. Each change was small, but contributed to the overall harmony and impact of the work. During their breaks, William and Catherine discussed their plans for the portrait's public debut. They had decided to unveil it at a special ceremony at the National Portrait Gallery, where it would eventually become part of the permanent collection. The event would be attended by dignitaries, art world figures, and representatives from the charities they supported. I hope people will see not just a formal royal portrait, but something that represents our values and our commitment to service, Catherine said as she watched the artist add final details to the background. The background itself had been carefully designed to complement their figures without overwhelming them. The artist had created a setting that suggested both the formality of their royal status and the warmth of their personalities. Subtle architectural elements provided structure, while soft lighting created an atmosphere of dignity and approachability. As the day progressed, the artist's work became increasingly focused and precise. He was now adding the finishing touches that would complete months of careful labor. Every brushstroke was considered and deliberate, contributing to the portrait's overall success and lasting appeal. A portrait is never really finished, the artist reflected as he worked. At some point, you simply have to stop and declare it complete. The challenge is knowing when you've achieved everything you set out to accomplish. For this portrait, that moment was clearly approaching. The painting had reached a level of completion that satisfied everyone involved. William and Catherine looked magnificent, captured at their most dignified yet approachable. The technical execution was flawless, while the emotional content was genuine and moving. The artist stepped back from the canvas and set down his brushes with a satisfied smile. "I believe we've created something truly special here," he announced. "This portrait captures not just how you look, but who you are as people and as partners in your royal duties." William and Catherine approached the finished portrait with wonder and gratitude. Seeing themselves represented with such skill and sensitivity was deeply moving. The artist had succeeded in creating a work that honored their royal status while celebrating their humanity and their relationship. "It's absolutely beautiful," Catherine said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've captured something I didn't even know I wanted preserved." William was equally moved by the finished work. "This will stand as a testament to this period of our lives, but more than that, it shows the partnership that makes our work possible." The artist beamed at their positive reaction. Creating this portrait had been one of the most rewarding commissions of his career, allowing him to work with subjects who understood the significance of what they were creating together. Their cooperation and genuine enthusiasm had made the entire process a joy rather than a burden. As they prepared to leave the studio for the final time, the artist began the careful process of preparing the portrait for transport and eventual display. The painting would need time to fully cure before it could be properly framed and hung, but the creative work was complete. "This has been an extraordinary experience," William said as they prepared to say goodbye to the artist. "You've given us something we'll treasure forever." Catherine added her own thanks, expressing gratitude for the artist's patience, skill, and sensitivity throughout the long process. "You've helped us see ourselves in a new way," she said. "This portrait will always remind us of this special time in our lives." The drive back to Kensington Palace was filled with excitement and satisfaction. They had accomplished something significant together, creating a lasting artistic record of their partnership and their commitment to their royal roles. The portrait would serve as an inspiration for future generations while preserving this moment in their lives forever. That evening, they shared the news of the portrait's completion with their children, describing the finished work and explaining when they might see it displayed publicly. The children were excited to hear that their parents' portrait would hang in galleries where visitors from around the world could see it. As they reflected on the entire experience, William and Catherine realized that the portrait process had given them more than just a beautiful painting. The weeks of sittings had provided opportunities for deep conversation, quiet reflection, and renewed appreciation for their relationship and their shared purpose. The official unveiling would take place in 2 weeks, marking the public debut of a portrait that represented not just two individuals, but a partnership dedicated to service, duty, and genuine care for others. Their first formal portrait together would take its place in the long tradition of royal art, while also marking a new chapter in how the monarchy presented itself to the world. The artist's masterpiece was complete, ready to inspire viewers and preserve the essence of William and Catherine's remarkable partnership for generations to come. Their faces would look out from the canvas with dignity, warmth, and the quiet confidence that came from a life dedicated to serving others. The portrait stood as both artistic achievement and historical document, capturing a moment in royal history when tradition and modernity had found perfect balance in two people who understood both their privilege and their responsibility.